I'm here to test laptops again. This is Legion Y9000X 2022, released last month. A new chassis is applied. Its exterior changes a lot. More GPUs are available, from GeForce RTX 3050 Ti to RTX 3070. Power consumption is stronger, with RTX 3050 Ti up to 95 watts and RTX 3060 and 3070 up to 100 watts. Other specs are also upgraded, such as the RAM. So how's the performance of this Y9000X? Let's go! As usual, specs first. CPU is i7-1700H, 14 cores and 20 threads. GPU uses NVIDIA GeForce RTX 3060 up to 100 watts, dual channel capable for RAM, with 16 GB DAR5 for 80 ohms. SSD is a 512 GB Micron 3400 PC 4.0x4. It uses a 16-inch display, 2560 by 1600, 100 Shri IPS screen, and 165 Hz refresh rate. The price is $1,421. The exterior changes a lot compared to last gen. First, it's heavier, from 1.92 kg to 2.25 kg. It's also thicker, from 17.9 mm to 17 to 19.7 mm. The default adapter is still 230W watts with a square plug, weighing 925 grams. It supports 135 watt USB-C charging. We will test its performance later. The exterior follows the new Legion lineup. Like a thinner Y700P, on the lid are Legion and Lenovo logos. Smaller than the keyboard panel, the display is easily opened with one hand. It's 16:10 aspect ratio. The bottom bezel is shrunken, in line with small side bezels, looking very beautiful. The base panel remains the classic style of 9000X. In the upper middle is the power button with Touch ID. The keyboard layout is very reasonable. Touchpad is placed near the edge with ordinary press feedback. What's nice is that the base panel has edges chamfered, making it smoother. The bottom case is made of metal, black sandblasted, with two rubber feet placed at top and bottom and a large ventilating grille. Taking a look at the IRO, the same as last gen, with two USB-Cs, a S1 card reader, a headset port, and at the back an USB-A and an HDMI. For such a thin gaming laptop, it's very generous in that area, except that USB-A ports are all backward, which is inconvenient. Now let's move to test results. First, the screen is made by BIBA. Tested color volume is 107.1% Shri. Color coverage is 97.4% Shri. There is a built-in color correction program. After application, average E is 1.05 with 4.67 at the max. Blue fringing is obvious. The brightness level goes as far as 553.3 nits, with full brightness DC dimming. 8.42 ms black to white response time, 13.35 ms gray to gray response time. Once OD is on, the two response times turn to 13.18 ms and 8.28 ms. A good performance for gaming laptops. It's excellent for daily use, and okay for photo and video editing. The processor uses the 12th Gen Intel Core i7-1700H, discussed before. Let's test directly. In the first Cinebench R20 loop test, it got 7,205, then dropped to between 6,600 and 6,900. In the first run, CPU power soared to 120 watts and then dropped to around 105 watts. Later, it rose to 115 watts and fell to around 90 watts. CPU temperatures also indicate an aggressive performance control strategy. Even if CPU reached the hottest 100 degrees, performance made no compromise. For clock speed, P-core averages 3.9 GHz and E-core 3.1 GHz. The multi-core performance ranks top in its height class. In single-core test, single-thread R20 scores 693, ordinary for a 12th Gen core processor. Its CPU performance is exceptional. What about GPU? It uses NVIDIA GeForce RTX 3060 with Samsung 8nm process, Ga106 core, 3840 stream processors, GDDR6, and 192-bit. The max power level is 100 watts, including 80 watts basic and 20 watts dynamic boost. Overclocking is on by default when core runs at over 100 MHz, RAM over 200 MHz. Let's see benchmarks. 8,201 for Timespeed, 9,794 for PhysE, 4,907 for superposition, 10% lower than 140 watt Y9000P. Another thing to note is that overclocking is on by default, but not every laptop meets the standard of overclocking. It affects stability. I recommend you switch it off. When off, the performance falls by about 3%. It's surely worth it to get a stabler experience with few compromise of performance. After performance tests, let's have a look at the game experience with such configuration. We have two modes of 2.5000 and 1080p. Due to its 16:10 aspect ratio, the GPU pressure in 2.5000 mode is bigger than 16:9. Taking a look at FPS of online games, Dota 2 under Ultra settings, 154, CSGO in lowest settings, 439.48, Apex Hero, 111.6. For 2.5000 online games, the GPU still runs smoothly at 100 watts with the help of GeForce RTX 3060. Now let's see standalones. Tomb Raider, 65 FPS, pretty good performance, but the rest are all below 45. Standalones and Ultra settings are difficult at default resolution rate. For GPU-intensive games it can reach 60 FPS in lowered settings. In 1080p mode, it performs well for online games. Dota 2, 172.49 frames, CSGO, 561, RTX 3060 is enough for running online games. Coupled with a high CPU performance, the tested FPS is excellent. For light gaming laptops, power consumption is a big problem. In standalones, it performs worse than RTX 3060 at 140 watts. So is it in both CPU and GPU intensive games, like PUBG Y9000X is not so good as traditional gaming laptops. When running professional softwares, such as Adobe, PS scores 1011, AE 945, PR 954, iCathing scores in SpecView 2020. The overall results are similar to 140W RTX 3060, except several projects. In general, its performance is outstanding for such a thin laptop, despite a high temperature of full-loaded CPU. Performance is not damaged. The performance is good with single core running at around 90 watts, while it also works well with RTX 3060. TG power level can reach 80 to 100 watts, narrowing its differences with thick laptops. It's enough for general players and productivity users. It's easy to disassemble Y9000X 2022. Unscrew all the screws. Pull the metallic backplate with a suction cup because buckles are plastic. Don't pull with too much force. The battery has a large capacity of 99.9 watt-hours. The default lifespan of this engineering sample is only 2 hours and 44 minutes in PMark 10. It obviously doesn't match the capacity. After turning on the IGPU mode, the result is 8 hours and 11 minutes. Much more sensible. It may be a bug because power consumption is abnormal when IGPU is on. Mass-produced ones won't be so. There are two M.2 SSD slots. The stock is a Micron 3400 PC 4.0x4. We've tested it before. Benchmarks are in the chart. There are silica gel pads on the back plate, used to conduct heat. For memory, there is a dual channel of soldered 8 grams plus slotted 8 grams. DAR5 for 80 ohms. Here are benchmarks. Reads and writes perform well, but latency is rather high, exceeding 100 ns. On the above is the black painted thermals module, including 2 fans and 5 heat pipes. A hidden pipe is used to dissipate heat of RAM. The power input is covered by a copper plate. Let's see the performance in stress tests. In beast mode and 25 degrees Celsius in stress FPU with i7-1700H, the temp remained at 96 degrees and power level was 90 watts. P-Core 3.6 GHz, E-Core 3.0 GHz. In stress GPU, RTX 3060 ran at 100 watts, 77.4 degrees, 1770 MHz in a 30-minute dual stress. CPU's power was 45 watts, 83 degrees, P-Core 2.3 GHz, E-Core 2.2 GHz, GPU 80 watts, 78.4 degrees, 1537 MHz. After customization, power level of CPU and GPU can be improved in a dual stress after being maxed out. CPU and GPU maintained a high power level of 45 and 100 watts with an increased temperature for GPU. We've tested several online games. Little improvement was seen, but slight increase in games like Tomb Raider. For exterior temperatures, the highest 43.6 degrees appeared at the keyboard center. Not very hot, but the heating area was not small. So is it in the backplate, unsuitable for use on the lap. As for noise, 33.7 decibels around. In stress test under the beast mode, it reached 51.4 decibels, a little noisy but not annoying. If the fan speed is maxed out, the noise would reach 55.7 decibels, much louder, but a maxed fan speed is unnecessary. A laptop also supports 135-watt PD input. We used the adapter of Xiaoxin Pro 16 to simulate the input and did a dual stress test in beast mode. Consumption of CPU and GPU stayed the same, but electric power from battery helped. After the storage dropped to 10%, GPU power fluctuated between 40 and 80 watts. CPU ran steadily at 45 watts. If a 135-watt adapter is used for emergency, the performance is quite good, enough for most users. If you need to use the laptop in an intense and stable manner for a long time, the default to 30W adapter is more reliable. After a review of the above specs, I list 3 pros and cons as always. Pros first. First, performance improves. Since the launch of 9000X lineup, we tested all our 9000X 2021 meets the performance at 45 and 75 watts, which is pretty good for a thin gaming laptop. The new Y9000X 2022 improves the GPU power level when keeping CPU at 45 watts, pushing the RTX 3060 GPU to run at 100 watts. Great progress. Second, USB-C power supply up to 135W. USB-C charging has been a basic spec for this lineup. Since this one is configured with GPU, power consumption is more demanding. The maximum power supply is thus lifted to 135 watts for outdoors work. Performance is ensured with a lighter adapter, a win-win design. Third, all-metallic cover and CNC process with exquisite build. The previous gen is metallic except the plastic sides. The thermals grill at the back isn't firm either, ready to break. Instead, metal is applied in Y9000X 2022. More beautiful and more firm. The build improves a lot, obviously. Lenovo engineers worked hard to update its exterior. Now cons. First, it's thicker and heavier, despite the specs upgrade. In the review of previous gen, I said that it's totally worth it to adding 2mm height and 200 grams weight for better thermals and GPU performance, and the 2022 gen is even 2mm thicker and 200 grams heavier than the previous gen. Second, the USBs are all at the back. The new 9000X has an additional HDMI, and USB 8 scalability has improved, but the frequently used USBs are all at the back, which is inconvenient. Intuitively, USBs should be placed on the side. Hope it can be improved next time. Third, large heating area. Heat insulation has long been a problem, which the new gen fails to escape. At full load, the heating area is wide, so I recommend external keyboards under long-term high load running. This laptop is a choice for those with high budget who want a good-looking laptop and who are picky about CPU performance but not to perfection. If outdoor activities and performance-demanding work are rare, instead, office or dorm work is normal, then this laptop suits you. For specs, I strongly recommend i7 Plus RTX 3060. It reaches a nice balance between power consumption, performance, and price. If you don't have enough budget, the entry-level i5 Plus RTX 3050 Ti is okay, but it's not launched yet. After a review of this laptop, I have mixed feelings. Throughout the laptop market, only ROG Zephyrus can compete with it among laptops at the same price. Its price is as low as possible, for it's thinner than its competitors. In current gaming laptop industry, high performance and high consumption are increasingly pursued. Even light and thin gaming laptops like Y9000X are doing so. Presumably the upgrade this time can win the favor of game players. That's all for this video. If you like it, please hit like and subscribe to our channel. If you want to interact with me every day, please follow us on WeChat official account. I will talk about a laptop there every day. This laptop may be worth it or not, but all we want is to provide info and guidance. This is BIBA Laptops. I'm Juan. See you next time.